so thrilled to be with you here today, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, where you may be joining from. Just one little point of history. For those of you who may be in the classes of the late 90s, you might have taken a class with Professor Greg Dees. Greg was really the academic pioneer of the field of social entrepreneurship. He helped launch the Initiative on Social Enterprise at Harvard Business School based on work he did at Yale. And then he came here in the mid-late 90s and launched CSI. I started following him at that time when I was in the Peace Corps in Eastern Europe and Romania working with NGOs. And he went to Duke in 2001 after leaving Stanford, and I went to work with him in 2004. And I was there 18 years. I worked with Greg for 9 years until he passed in 2013. So Greg is definitely a key reason why I'm in this field, and a key reason why I came back well, not came back, but came to Stanford in the first place. So we're thrilled to be here and be with you today. We've got a great session planned. I'm going to start by giving an overview of CSI and a lot of our programming, just as in a series like this, GSB Now, we want to familiarize you with what's going on these days, but really then want to shift to a great panel discussion. We've got three amazing panelists here. Anisha Mudaliar is in the class of 23, was involved in CSI as a student. She's now the Vice President of Philanthropy and Impact at Jasper Ridge Partners. Noelle Eveland is here from she's a second year class of 25. She's the Co-CIO of the GSB Impact Fund, which you're going to hear about a little bit more. And Hamza Farrukh is also in the class of 25, the founder of Bondh, the Solar Water Project. You're going to hear about these, and also have another GSB colleague here today, Nastasia Everhard, who's the Associate Director of Alumni Relations Community Programming, will join here at the end. So if you're not familiar with CSI, we were founded in 1999 by Greg Dees and colleagues. Really, our mission is to educate insightful leaders for social and environmental change. Our theory of change revolves around several key areas: helping students understand issues, build the skills to manage impact organizations and ecosystems, design and measure impact, and then help them get started in a lot of ways. And we really hope for our graduates to work across sectors for a more just, sustainable, and prosperous world. Now, if you're an alum from the 90s, 80s, or 70s, you might recall the Public Management Program, the PMP. So the PMP and CSI merged in the late 2000s, around 2008-9, and we are kind of the successor to the PMP, but we still manage the certificate that you might be familiar, the Certificate in Public Management, which is now called the Certificate in Public Management and Social Innovation. So we are today's version of the PMP, essentially. We've got an amazing team. Professor Neil Malhotra is our faculty director. I've got a great team of staff who, I've worked with universities around the world in helping launch and build their social innovation centers, and I'm just thrilled to be here with this team. I came about 2 years ago. My successor, Bernadette Clavier, announced she was retiring. She did amazing work for the previous 8 years. Just thrilled to be part of this team. We're really here to serve our students. And for those of you who might not have been on campus lately, we really work with a wide variety of students. Here's a few typical profiles. There are students who want to be leaders in corporations, but want to be more responsible business leaders, thinking about the social environmental impact of their work. We have students who are switching from maybe the private to the public sector, or maybe public to private to nonprofit. So a lot of folks who are looking to move across sectors. We definitely those who have a social impact background who want to accelerate and have even greater impact. Maybe they're building skills for a new function or role. And we certainly have a significant number of students who want to launch their own impact ventures. They're kind of the aspiring social, or now we often say impact entrepreneurs. If you take a peek here, this was from a survey of our first years when they came to an orientation session this fall. Very high interest in education, energy, environment, climate, financial inclusion, but also significant interest in healthcare, public policy as well, but a lot of different areas of interest among our students. And when we ask them, what sort of work would they like to do, it really ranges. Certainly you'll see a high number, 80% would eventually like to dabble in impact entrepreneurship, which doesn't mean necessarily right after they graduate, but at some point in the following years. There's about a quarter of our students who are interested in government. But look at this here, impact investing. Almost 2/3 of our students are interested in impact investing, hence the topic for our panel today. But in many ways, you could see CSI as almost an investment in the impact of our students for classes to come. And those of you who might have the public management certificate, as I said, it's still around today. Uh, we have more than 40, no, actually more than 60 courses that count toward the certificate across three broad distribution areas: understanding problems, designing, assessing impact, building, managing, scaling organizations and ecosystems. Those are actually going to change a little bit in the fall for the class of 27. We're refining it a little bit to understanding systems, stakeholders, and societal challenges, that first bucket. And we're going to split separate a assessing impact bucket from designing and financing. You can see here about a third of the class of 24 earned the certificate. So a total of 157 MBAs and 12 MSX students. But 92% of the class of 2004 actually took at least one course that counts toward the certificate. So it's still a significant feature of the school. It's the only additional transcript designation you can earn here. You can get the certificate along with your MBA or MSX program. Just a couple quick examples. A great class that's been around for more than 20 years now, Design for Extreme Affordability, which we lovingly call Extreme, has reached more than 180 million lives through design projects with nearly 800 students in over 30 countries around the world. Two famous ones: Embrace, the baby warmer, is being used today in Ukraine to help children who don't have access to incubators. Or Delight Design has come up with amazing solar projects and financing projects to bring light to tens of millions of people around the world. Just two examples of the amazing projects. One that you might be interested in, Professor Brian Lowry leads a program for Leadership for Society, which includes a couple different classes and some other programs. But we have a webinar every spring quarter that's free and open to all. It's actually part of a class, but anybody can tune in on a Monday night and listen to our speakers. We're just about to announce the spring lineup of speakers. Amazing group of folks who've moved across sectors. And that's typically on a Monday evening, but you can also play them later. And you can view past webinars if you'd like. So again, we'll share this. And we haven't announced the spring speakers yet, but I know Brian's just about to do that. That's a great opportunity for anybody. It can be an alum, a student, or anybody around the world can join those speakers. We also have a variety of different co-curricular programs. I'll highlight a few. We're going to talk more today about the Impact Fund, but it's a great opportunity that engages about 80 students a year, educating them on the process of impact investing, thinking about how to create true positive social environmental impacts through investments in impact ventures and actually generating financial returns to keep the fund going. Great opportunity here. You'll hear a little bit more specifically today. We have a program for students who want to launch their ventures, our Impact Entrepreneurship program, to build skills, networks, and reduce financial barriers. One of the cool things that we started doing several years ago is we bring in a cohort of visiting impact entrepreneurs. These are serial impact entrepreneurs from around the world who really help coach and guide our students. And we're just thrilled every year we announce a new cohort. You can see here, just as one example, Sonali Mehta Rao has worked with social enterprises around the world, including in India, on women-led social enterprises. She's just been an amazing coach and advisor for our students. So every year around January, we announce each new cohort of those. It really extends the impact of our team. We have a variety of different ways that we reduce financial barriers for students to pursue impact. For example, students who are going into impact careers, and what we call the joiners, the joining impact organizations. We have an annual $20,000 prize for top 5 students. For students who actually want to launch their own ventures, for, about 16 years now, we've had the Stanford Impact Founders Fellowship that every year funds 5 students that are looking to launch an impact venture, and now 5 more that are launching what we're calling ecopreneurship ventures. And each of those fellows receives $110,000 in coaching for a year to actually launch their venture, which is really exciting. It turns out, to date, we've had more than 7.5 million positively impacted by those ventures in 12 countries around the world, a wide variety of goals. Based on the roughly 2.6 million we provided to the first 15 sets of fellows, they've now multiplied that by 63 times in the funding raised significantly since then. 141 million non-dilutive and 23 million in equity funding. It's just been an amazing example of how Stanford is really fueling impact through our alumni launching ventures. And finally, for those of you who may not be aware, as alumni, you may be eligible for loan forgiveness if you're still paying your GSB loans. If you're working in a nonprofit or government agency, let us know. And if you're still paying your loans, you would be eligible for loan forgiveness, where based on your income level, we can help you with your loans. Since the class of 22 and subsequently, we can now also support on a kind of a trial basis. It's still a bit of a pilot for us. Students who are going into for-profit impact ventures, they have to meet certain requirements. It's got to be early stage, pre-Series B. They have to have impact or philanthropy or other concessionary capital, and so forth. And so students in the class of 22 and beyond are now eligible for that. Lots of ways that we engage. Our alumni help serve as reviewers for our various prizes. They come in and offer feedback to students' venture ideas and advising. There are certainly alumni who help source deals for our impact fund and advise. You may have an internship opportunity that we can support through the SMIF. You might remember the SMIF, the Social Management Emergent Fund. We still manage that. Lots of career advising. So lots of ways that you can help. We'll share this around. You can click and offer your thoughts and ideas on how to do that a little bit later. But what I'd really love to do is kind of take some time now to kind of have a discussion with our panelists, and we've got some really great folks here today. And the way we've structured it is we've invited 2 current students and an alumna to talk a little bit, reflect a little bit on this theme of investing in impact. And the way we're going to do it is I'll ask one panelist at a time to respond to a question or two, and then I will ask for the panel together to respond to a question or two, and then we'll go ahead and open to Q&A from yourselves to have a broader discussion as well. So when we get there, I'll let you know how to do it. In the meantime, you're welcome to put some questions in chat that we'll get to after the opening discussion. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to start with the student first. Noelle Eveland is here in the class of 25, who's been the co-chief investment officer for the Impact Fund. And what I'll do is ask a question or two in turn. And so, Noelle, I'm curious, before you came to the GSB, you had some pretty significant career experience in the private sector, although with a focus on climate and sustainability. I mean, I'm wondering, what sparked your interest in this topic of impact investing? What was it that kind of brought this kind of private sector mindset, but societal, environmental impact together? What sparked that interest, Noelle?
Yeah, I think it started, I applied to the GSB as a senior in college, and I was curious about how to go from like an engineer into thinking about how to like drive impact. And I think that I had ideas about all the things that are wrong in the world and wanting to solve a lot of those things, but I think it can be easy to be like an idealist and have a lot of things that you want to see changed, but not understand how to make those changes. And so like the original idea of coming to the GSB was to just learn how to like operate within the constraints of the world and move the people who have the power and the money to make these changes, like how to motivate them. And when I was at 3M as an engineer, there was an employee organized session on impact investing. And it was the first time I'd heard of it. And I found it just so interesting. And at that point, I kind of knew it was something I wanted to explore more at the GSB. And so the fact that the impact fund existed and that we had the CSI, it kind of knew that Stanford was the right home for me. And I was really excited about that as a somewhat hesitant MBA student. Yeah. And the speaker just talked about this huge spectrum that exists between like traditional investing and philanthropy, and how impact investing can play in that space, and how there's just so many different approaches. And so when I was at 3M, I started to get really interested in answering the question of like, how do you get these big institutions like corporations, like institutional investors, sold on the idea that impactful businesses and innovative technologies can be good investments? And so as an engineer, I didn't really have good answers to that question of like, what does stop people and what does motivate them to put their money into these technologies? And so coming to the GSB, it was something I really wanted to understand, was how you can enable these entities to invest their money into driving the big solutions that we need across a wide variety of sectors, which for me has been really focused on climate and the environment, but is equally applicable to like a lot of the big challenges that we have. And I also knew that impact investing was like this space that's kind of on the cutting edge of how businesses and investing can be an engine of positive change. And this is something that I really feel is like core at the heart of the GSB ethos and what can make us different in some ways than other business schools. So it's been really rewarding to be here and explore these ideas.
If I can go off script for a second, I'm curious, how was it that this interest you sparked at that time How did you realize GSB was a place to be? Because we have a bunch of alumni here who are kind of ambassadors to the world, and to the extent we can raise awareness among prospective students such as you were, that this is the place to be. Like, what was it that made you make the connection to GSB and these interests?
Yeah, so I went through a lot of phases in my like delayed enrollment period. So from the time that I accepted it and my senior year of college, and then to the like 4 to 5 years before I got here. There was even times where I was like applying to the Peace Corps, like you did, Matt, and I was like Teach for America, and I was just trying to find what felt like the right place for me to have a positive impact in the world. And I didn't know for sure that business school, like I had bought into the idea that like business could be an engine for positive change. I'm happy to say I am now bought into that. But I truly like looked at Stanford's loan forgiveness program, and that really felt like this assurance that like if I decide to go into a social impact career after this and I don't have this high salary job, that I could still have those options of like doing the impactful work that I wanted to do before business school, like that would still be on the table. And I think that was a really big signal to me that like GSB puts their money where their mouth is and like really wants to enable these leaders to go out and do all kinds of positive change in the world. And so it felt like I wasn't losing any options by going to business school. And that seems like a good signal.
Well, that's a really helpful insight. And so a note to all of our folks online, keeping your eyes and ears open for folks who want to use business skills to make a difference in the world and raising their awareness of our programming. So let me ask you now, when you got here, what have you done? Like, how have you engaged to kind of spark and grow this interest in impact investing? Are there certain programs, activities, internships, or whatever that allow you to build kind of your portfolio as you look to graduate?
Yeah, the two main ways have been really the Impact Fund and then this whole spectrum of impact investing classes that we have. So at the GSB Impact Fund last year, I was on a deal team, I was on the Justice deal team, and then this year leading the fund. It's been just such a cool and unique experience, having students be able to get real world experience as an impact investor. So we have 7 deal teams, 2 climate, fintech, education, healthcare, urban development, and justice. And Anisha was a former CIO of the fund who's gone on to do amazing work, which is something we really hope to make possible for all of the students at the fund who are interested in getting into the space. So being an engine for education and getting people excited about the careers that they can have. So the fund, like we source, diligence, and pitch companies, and we ultimately invest real money in these companies. We aim to invest around $200K per year. And we've invested $1 million to date, which in the grand scheme of things is not huge, but like actually getting students to have hands-on experience with this really does give them the platform to go and build careers in the space. And this last week we hosted a career trek, which was really interesting because we got to talk to all of these different impact investing firms that are all different flavors. So we talked to TPG Rise Climate, which is like a private equity take on impact investing. And then we ended the day with Flourish, who is a fintech impact investing company, but they have a lot more freedom because they have this like singular founder who was a funder who was the founder of eBay. And so like kind of where do you play on that like private equity to like almost more like philanthropic, but it's not. They're still like going for market returns, but they have a lot more flexibility having that like one founder who has a vision. But beyond this, there have been a lot of classes at the GSB. There's an impact investing class that's been going on for a long time with Heidi Patel and Charles Ewald, who have been really vanguards in the field of impact investing. And then last quarter, there was a class on climate finance, which was taught by Jonathan Garfinkel, who's one of the leaders at TPG Rise Climate. So I think even within like the education that we have access to at GSB, you can start to see like all of these different approaches and flavors of impact investing and figure out like where you would want to potentially play in a career.
That's exciting. So you found lots of ways to learn and grow the skills. And if I were not to put you in the spot, but if I were to ask you, what do the students in the fund see as what impact investing is? Well, how would you answer that? What for folks who may be kind of new to this term, how does the fund look at what that means?
Yeah, I think something we've tried to get across to students is that it really is a spectrum and that there isn't one size fits all for impact investing, but it's this idea of like just how do you take money and use it to drive impact at scale. And I think like across all the different sectors, it looks different, and across the different funds, like there's just no one size fits all. And so I think helping students understand, like, this is where we play in the impact fund, which is like, we're not the leading investor, like we're not the lead investor. So we have different value add that we can have, different ways of having impact. But there are a lot of people who, you know, like the Generation Fund that was private, it was public equities. And like when they launched that fund, like we're trying to prove that you could have a public equities portfolio that wasn't in certain like harmful to climate fields. And so there can be, like, we learned this in my impact investing class, but like field level impact, firm level impact, impact at the portfolio companies that you're invested in, and like the way that you can demonstrate just new approaches, and you can be an impact entrepreneur like through the field of investing. I think it's just getting across that it's very diverse, and there's a lot of ways you can do it, and you can also like innovate within the field.
That's exciting. You can actually think of the field itself as a form of social innovation, right? And new ways of doing things. Well, thanks, Noelle. I really appreciate you sharing a little bit of your experience. We'll come back for a group discussion in a little bit, but let me shift over to Anisha. You know, you were in the class of 23. You were also a CIO for the fund itself, but you know, before you came to GSB, I know you had kind of a career that was across private and public sectors and a focus in international development and so forth. I'm curious, you know, with that background, how did you use your time at the GSB to really advance your understanding and then eventually your career? And then we'll ask you what you've done since. But while you were here, what was it? How did you engage?
Yeah. So yeah, as you mentioned, my background part of GSB was in the impact space across a few different sectors. So started my career in management consulting at BCG, fully focused on the public sector. So I worked with several different government agencies. And then I pivoted into the nonprofit world and spent a number of years at an organization, a nonprofit called Endeavor, supporting entrepreneurs in emerging markets and scaling their businesses. So prior to GSB, I had some exposure to government, public sector, exposure to the nonprofit sector. Maybe you could classify me sort of in that accelerator profiler archetype that Mark shared of different students, or that Matt shared about different students. So I was really excited to come to GSB and really accelerate my impact career and expand my aperture. And so I wanted to use my time at GSB to explore the role of business in helping to scale impact and specifically look at impact investing. And so I was lucky to get to do that at GSB through a few different avenues. So similar to Noelle, the Impact Fund was a really foundational experience for me to have that hands-on learning within the realm of impact investing. And then classroom learning was also really critical. And then more generally, just all the incredible people you're exposed to through your time at GSB, which just opens up the range of career possibilities and paths. So, you know, speaking to the Impact Fund first, which Noelle did a fantastic job describing, that was a really big reason that I was drawn to the GSB and wanted to come to the GSB. And the hands-on learning you get through the Impact Fund is really remarkable. You're getting to learn about, you know, developing an investment thesis and sourcing companies and evaluating both impact fundamentals alongside business fundamentals, and learn from experts out in the field. But then you actually get to go and do it. And the fact that it's real capital and real companies, I think makes all the difference. And that community aspect of the Impact Fund is also really important. You're around like-minded peers who care about impact. And so that is a community both at the GSB and, you know, after GSB is one that I found to be really special and still feel so connected to.
But
And then,
can I ask you just one sec?
yeah.
Do students make the decision, or how's the decision made of what's going to be invested in? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so students form deal teams. As Noelle mentioned, we have 7 different deal teams, and they get together and as a team form an investment thesis for these are the world of investments that we want to explore, and this is our thesis for how we're going to create impact in this specific sector, whether it's justice or urban development or climate. And the students get together and then start sourcing different companies. So go out into the world and start meeting incredible impact entrepreneurs. You know, bring that back to the team, start to evaluate which companies could be a good fit, and then bring that forward to an investment committee. So the Impact Fund has an investment committee that is formed of different alumni, you know, in sort of all stages of their career, who come together, and the students actually present and pitch their deals to the investment committee, who then asks, you know, rigorous questions, helping to kind of dive in and understand the businesses better, and then through that process, make a decision around sort of which companies to back and invest in. So it's a whole process that culminates in a final sort of selection.
Thanks, Anisha. And how about since GSB? What have you done? How have you followed these interests on into your career?
Yeah, so since GSB, I work at a firm called Jasper Ridge Partners, and the job that I'm in now is, I didn't even know this type of job existed, honestly, before GSB, and I was introduced to it because of GSB through a former GSB Impact Fund alum who I now work with. So Jasper Ridge is essentially, it's a multifamily office. So we manage 40 billion in assets on behalf of ultra high net worth families and a few institutional clients. And so many of my colleagues are focused on investing and helping to build and grow our clients' wealth. And then in addition to our investment services, we also partner with our families to help them think through how they want to use their wealth to make an impact. And so we encourage our families to really start with the problem and let that guide them to the solution and the right capital type. And so we help them to think expansively across kind of the spectrum of grant making to 501c3 nonprofits, grant making to 501c4 entities, that can work on policy advocacy, and then impact investing across both concessionary or impact first investing as well as market rate impact investing. And so we can help them think through, solutions across that spectrum, where the trade-offs lie, where the approaches might be different based on the issue area. And I've realized through my own career and time that I've spent across different sectors, you need business and government and nonprofits. And so in my work partnering with families, we can help them think through kind of these systems, these different levers for change, and intervention points, and how they can craft a strategy to deploy their wealth and their capital to make an impact. So it's a special place to be.
Oh, it's exciting. You're actually able to put all these interests and skills and experiences to work. And if, let's say, a new client come to you and say, "What is this impact investing concept?" How would you answer that from the perspective of your firm?
Yeah, I would say impact investing essentially is you're looking to intentionally create impact alongside generating financial returns. And I think that intention to create impact is a really key and important piece of impact investing. And like Noelle mentioned, there's really a whole spectrum of what impact investing can look like, and across the spectrum from sort of market rate impact investing, impact investing that's achieving market rate returns alongside meaningful impact, as well as more concessionary or impact first investing, where maybe you're taking on more risk or you're accepting potentially below market returns because you're really being compensated in terms of the level and depth of impact that you're achieving. And so there's really kind of like a whole spectrum, and it's important to understand like where you might be able to play depending on the issue, kind of depending on the approach that you want to take. But the intention to create impact is really important.
Yeah. Thanks, Nisha. Thanks for sharing. And it's exciting that you're at Jasper Ridge Partners to actually take this and implement it in the real world. So I appreciate you sharing. I thought it'd be fun to flip the tables in a sense and add a panelist who's on the entrepreneurship side and someone who has to pursue, capital for impact. And so I'm really thrilled that we're joined by Hamza Farrukh of the class of 25. He was an impact entrepreneur before coming to the GSB. As a matter of fact, I remember watching a TEDx talk, if I'm not mistaken, Hamza, where you actually shared a little bit about your project. Can you? So welcome, Hamza. You're in the class of 25. Can you tell us a little bit more about what this solar water project is and kind of what you're trying to achieve through it?
Thank you, Matt, and hello, everyone. Very happy to be here. And this is an extremely important community for all of us here at the GSB, so glad we can do this. Very briefly, Solar Water Project is founded sort of through my own personal experience growing up in Pakistan, water scarcity, and it was an attempt to actually bring innovation and technology, which was purpose-built for clean water in last mile communities. And I think in the interest of sort of explaining that succinctly, I'll just very quickly share my screen to just sort of, show how the flagship way of our doing the work actually works. And so, over the course of the last decade, let's just say we innovated slowly and but surely to create what is now called the Oasis Box. And this device is entirely solar powered and draws water from multiple sources, most commonly in developing economies and last mile villages. These will be underground boreholes. So we extract that water, and then most importantly, it goes through multi stages of filtration. And the idea there is to remove both bacterial contamination, which is the cause of disease, including cholera and diarrhea, which, by the way, in Pakistan is the cause almost of 60% of the sort of reported disease overall amongst children in Pakistan. And so this device will remove both bacteria as well as chemicals. And then this device that you're seeing now, sort of this flow meter, this small internal portion, will actually report the daily amount of water extracted, filtered, delivered, and the end users, in essence, can just turn the tap and access clean water, very similar to the way we would do it in sort of our daily lives. And I'm happy to report, actually, it's sort of this journey has been a 10-year journey, and last week we delivered our 1 billionth cup of clean water. So appreciate that, and so it's been really powerful to just kind of be part of it, and here we are, Matt.
That's amazing. So congratulations. What incredible impact you're having. And I'm wondering, how have you used your time at the GSB to imagine even greater impact at scale? Were there certain activities you've done that have helped you, and maybe rethinking your business model, for example, how you're going to acquire capital? If you share a little bit about your time here.
Absolutely. So I remember it was fall quarter of MBA one year when I came in and actually sort of sat with you, Matt. And I think the idea there was to really sort of zoom out and see what was needed to take a good idea, which is a design solution, to scale. And so we looked at, a 501c charitable model, and then we were considering a social impact model as a registered, B Corp. And so it was great to do it at that point, because whatever I've sort of done academically, as well as pursued in multiple programs within the Stanford ecosystem more broadly, which, as we all know, is super decentralized, has been super powerful and additive. So three key examples. You mentioned the certificate in public management. Without realizing I was pursuing it, I actually completed it almost at the start of fall quarter in my MBA 2 year, because I was just so focused on measurement of impact and whatnot. And so I think Haley reached out and it was great. And that's been a great framework of thinking around impact, which is, okay, here's what I'm doing, here's why I'm doing. And so I think if I had sort of done the GSB ecosystem at the start of this journey, it probably would have taken 2 years instead of 10 to get here, but I'm glad I did. The second thing, which was super powerful beyond the academics, was in my case, there is this program at the School of Engineering called the Emergence Accelerator Program. And that actually came in through CSI as well as a reference. And so that program really helped me transition from a pure nonprofit model to a scalable social venture. And there's an amazing class actually by Professor Matt Bannock, who references the idea of some few thousand NGOs that have transitioned to $50 million organizations over the last 50 years, and hundreds and millions of other organizations that have gone to that same number as private corps. And that was a big game changer for us. And so I think the Emergence program helped really land this new structure, help do some client and customer finding. We're able to lock in 2 new customers that have actually since then helped us scale to East Africa, set up some roots there, and sort of been part of that 1 billion journey. And the final thing has really been being part of the student community. And so, I am one of the deal team members, sort of, working with Noelle on the fintech deal team at the Impact Fund. I've taken one of the ALP classes around the management of impact. And so I think the community here is actually real, and this wouldn't get registered, this wouldn't really surface overall, but you'll be passing at Coupa and sit down with a fellow impact maker, and they just question you on the premise of what you're doing, and just go back and forth for 30 minutes, and you walk away feeling, okay, wow. These are, and I like to use this phrase, and I'll end there, which is in sort of the business world, we have this willingness to pay, and I like to think of this as willingness to act, where somebody will just sit with you and actually not just give the advice, but be like, hey, let me be that reference. Let me send that email to that foundation on your behalf because this technology is really cool. Because I think you can really do the work that others are claiming to do. And so I think that's been super additive. And when you add the academics and the social system and the community together, I think that's where the magic happens.
That's so powerful. You just look at the power of the GSB Impact kind of community and ecosystem. It's just such an incredible opportunity. Let me just do one quick follow-up. A program that I didn't specifically highlight. We talked about the SMIF, the summer internships for joiners. But in your case, you did a special summer program called IDIF, the Impact Design Immersion Fellowship through CSI. What was that? What is the IDIF and what did you do?
So IDIF really helps test out specific ideas in the real world with both mentorship support as well as some capital support over the course of the summer. And so in my case, in an applied sense, really what it was figuring out if this Oasis box and the work around water actually could be scaled beyond Pakistan, where we've done a lot of the work. And so I think what I wanted to really test was be in Nairobi, be in Africa, and actually go and meet with people to understand what they were doing, how they were looking at the market, if there is a market, would there be willingness to pay, and all those things. And so the IDIA program was super assistive in actually stress testing some of the assumptions and some of the models that I'd been, sort of scribbling down during my classes at the GSB. And I think this is exactly, I think, great segue, Matt, right? I think it was that academic standing going into the summer with this idea, pressure testing it, realizing it works, and then mustering the support of the community to actually get some units into East Africa to begin the work. And I think as I even talk about it, it is really moving for me personally because the magic happens somewhere in the middle. You can't really pinpoint exactly if it was IDIF or if it was emergence or if it was one of the classes. But together it does work, and sort of I think that's great.
That's an incredible testament to the power of the experience and the community. So thanks for sharing that. And so before we get to questions for the panel, feel free to drop some in chat and or eventually raise your hand. But let me ask the panelists one question to benefit the participants, which is, Hamza, Anisha, and Noelle, any suggestions you would have if there are alumni here who'd like to learn more about what impact investing is? Any thoughts anybody has on, how to learn more, organizations, conferences, information sources that you might recommend? I don't know if any of you have a thought or two you might want to share.
Sure. I can kick off with a few of the resources that I've found helpful and turned to in my day-to-day. It's housed at Stanford, but it's one that I've long been following. It's the Stanford Social Innovation Review. It's a really incredible publication and really highlights kind of the forefront of research and thinking about the social innovation field more broadly and also specifically impact investing. So I have found Stanford Social Innovation Review to be an incredible resource. There's also a newsletter called Impact Alpha, where it's sort of like a knowledge platform, and they have a daily and weekly newsletter that can keep you up to date on sort of all of the latest trends and themes and what's happening around the world and impact investing, kind of the latest deals. So I found that to be a useful resource as well. And then finally, one last one I'll mention is Impact Frontiers. I think it used to be called the Impact Management Project. Has some really valuable frameworks to think about impact measurement, kind of what are the different elements that you would use to evaluate impact in the context of impact investing. And so that's another one that I've found to be useful.
I especially appreciate you pointing out SSIR, and I corrected the URL in the chat. CSI launched SSIR back in 2003. It was some of the folks in class of 2009 wrote that in the original business plan for CSI. It spun out to the Center for Philanthropy and Civil Society around 2010, but we still have a real affinity, and I just had helped one of our alumni publish an article in the most recent issue of SSIR. So thanks for pointing that out. And by the way, everybody, we are going to send out a list of these resources when we send out the recording. So don't worry if you didn't get a chance to write it down. We'll share that as well. Any other panelists want to share your thoughts or resources or suggestions for how folks can learn more about this field?
So I'll very briefly add something. Not really publication, but at the intersection of climate change and social impact, there are a bunch of really cool projects that are coming up that make use of climate financing to actually further social impact. And I think gold standard registered projects have been one which have been great as a source of learning. And I think so it's looking through the literature and the registry on the gold standard website. And I'm happy to sort of post that in the chat as well.
That's awesome. Thank you, Hamza. Noelle, any suggestions you might have?
Yes, I was going to put a link to GIN in the chat, like the Global Impact Investing Network. But I was also going to say, oh, I am unmuted. That's good. I think right now there's a lot of like confusion in the way that we all talk about impact investing, and I think like in the media there's a lot going on with ESG investing and like attacks at ESG, but I think it's just really important to keep in mind that like ESG investing and impact investing are just really not the same thing at all. ESG is a measurement system for companies to report how they're doing on those like 3 pillars, and it's focused a lot of times on like not doing bad things and like ensuring that you're hitting these different metrics of not doing bad in a company. And I think, as Anisha said, like impact investing focuses on the intention to do good, to go out in the world and positively do good and not just take a business and evaluate whether or not it's doing bad, which I think there are merits to ESG as well. And there's like valid criticisms, but I think that just not conflating the two is really important when you do like want to learn more about impact investing, making sure that like those two ideas are held really distinct in your brain.
That's really, really helpful distinction. Thank you for sharing that. We'll share some other resources too that come to mind for me. If you're in the Bay Area, the annual SOCAP conference in October, it's a convening of almost 2,000 impact investors, entrepreneurs, and others. Great opportunity. And then another organization that is really aimed for kind of early stage investors and a learning opportunity as well for folks who want to learn more. They do various events, and I think they have a chapter here in the Bay Area. I'm still new to the Bay Area, but I know I've gotten some invitations. Is a group called Investor Circle. Another great opportunity to learn more about it. So let's get a few questions from the audience. Feel free to put something in chat or raise your hand. And one question that's come in is like, how can I have my company considered for funding through impact investment? Any recommendations you might make? Maybe Anisha, you've been out there a little bit. Any thoughts that you might have if there's a company that may be a good fit? How could somebody think about whether it's a good fit and make it maybe pitch it for some impact investment? Any thoughts that you would have?
Yeah, I think it depends on kind of what sector the company is and the approach that they're taking. Because I think, as we've talked about, impact investing takes a lot of different forms. There's a lot of different types of impact investors. One way I personally sort of think about the universe of impact investors is, there's family offices or multifamily offices. Like Noelle described, like Flourish Ventures started out of, Piero Midyar, the founder of eBay, like decided he wanted to, he and his wife Pam wanted to put together their capital to invest for impact. So family offices, it's a single sort of like decision maker entity that might have more flexibility in the types of opportunities that they can look at. Then there's also impact funds that might be raising capital from sort of outside investors. They have their own LPs and are delivering returns to a set of investors. And they might have some more specifications around what they can invest in. There's sector specific impact funds, healthcare investors or education investors. And then there's also funds kind of investing at certain stages, like, TPG Rise, KKR, those are all much like sort of like later stage private equity style investors. So I think maybe just starting first with understanding and kind of segmenting the universe of impact investors and understanding kind of like where your company, which types of investors would be to go after might be like a good place to start.
Any other panelists want to share any thoughts you have on if a company was thinking about whether they might be a good fit for impact investment?
Yeah, I can add on. I think Anisha did a really great job. I think just a couple other things would be like looking at their investment theses and making sure that like the way that your company drives impact is a really good match for them, because like she was saying, like a lot of people, like there's not one impact investing firm. So like, making sure that a lot of firms will like publish their investment theses because they're trying to make that match. And I think in the world of impact investing, it's really important to have the people who are investing the money be impact aligned with the companies, and they want companies that are really impact aligned with them. And so, yeah, reading about what that firm is about. And I would say too, a lot of firms will have like inbound sourcing avenues where you can like send them your pitch deck and things like that. But I think they get such high volume that might not be the most efficient way, but at least a lot of them, like they say that they go through every single deal. So it's not a useless endeavor to find a firm that seems like a good fit for you and then send them your information.
Great tip. I'm adding two to chat. One thing we're working on right now is we have this website called the Social Entrepreneurship Hub. I just put in chat, or SE Hub. We have online learning modules. One thing we're working on, it's not there yet, so watch this space, is we're working with Heidi Patel, who you heard about earlier, and Steve Davis to create a new module helping entrepreneurs kind of navigate the various sources of capital and how to determine which might be a good fit for them. So we actually have some McKinsey consultants out right now working to kind of help us finalize the model and so forth. We're probably going to do an article in the Stanford Social Innovation Review. So watch this space. And then at the risk of pointing to another university, but CSI founder Greg Dees was instrumental in this too. When I was at Duke, my colleagues launched what's called the Smart Impact Capital Learning Series, which has online learning modules to kind of introduce entrepreneurs to different forms of impact capital and what might be a good fit for them. So I just put that chat as well. So then there's a question here of how alumni could get involved in mentoring or coaching GSB social entrepreneurs. So a couple of things you could do. Definitely reach out to me. I'm going to put up in, I'll share again on screen. There's a QR code if you want to scan. Let me just put share and then bring my screen up, and I'll put it full screen here in a second. If you want to snap this QR code, it takes you to a little information form where we have what we call our CSI champions. 2 or 3 times a year we share some announcements, but there's also a place there for you to say you'd like to help. There are other ways you can help. For example, both Noelle and Anisha mentioned we have these deal teams sourcing deals. If you know of ventures that might be worth our impact fund investing in, you can help us source those. Some of our alumni serve as advisors in various ways. You heard that there are some alumni on the investment committee as well. Lots of different ways. So first step is just let us know of your interest, and then we can kind of follow up with you. I will say that CSI doesn't have a strong kind of volunteer management component, but we are eager to have more alumni involved. And so if you give us a little bit of patience, we'll do our best to follow up with you as soon as we can. But would love to have more. I'd love to build the ties between alumni and students as best we can. Another question, are there any good social ventures to keep your eye on that you think are really trending? Things that you think are exciting, to watch? Any of our panelists want to share, an example of something you think, wow, this is a really interesting space? Like obviously generative AI, going to be fascinating to see how that evolves. But other areas that you think are worth watching?
I don't know if you guys have heard of
So
this
many.
the company called Solar Water Project. They've come up with this cool block.
There you go. Absolutely. Hamza. Yeah, great love for folks to get more involved with that.
I will mention sort of one space in particular. I kind of alluded to it earlier. A lot of social impact historically has been difficult to scale, partly because even though you have these great reportable metrics, there's not really capital associated with it. And so the trend that I've been noticing is a lot of social impact organizations really tapping into climate financing. Because there's usually 1 or 2 programs that are either decentralized. So for us, it was because it was solar powered, and we've been in solar power for 10 years. But because of climate finance, we're able to actually leverage some of the systems, get registered with Gold Standard. We've been design reviewed. And then actually that's opening a lot of conversation that was inaccessible otherwise. So I'll give one example. And we're not the only one in this space. There are others as well. So I shared the registry at Gold Standard. What was really cool is soon as you start moving into climate financing, there's an acceleration of path into sort of much bigger pools of money, partly because the folks playing in climate finance are usually the high-end investor base and the asset managers and others who are trying to move into the space. And so we've been contacted by folks who want to actually turn our units into asset-backed climate finance models that can be turned into private credit instruments. And so it's a really cool mix of sort of conventional finance meets climate finance meets social impact. And I, don't think I have anything super concrete there, but as we think about AI applications for social impact, which is super instrumental in continuing to scale, I think climate finance is the other sort of, core fundamental, which is continuing to actually drive a lot of really cool acceleration.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing. And what I want to do is I want to give Nastasha a chance from the alumni relations team. Anisha and Noelle, if there's other trends that you want to share, if you could share those in chat, and I definitely recommend SSIR is another good place to watch for trends. But to turn over to you, Nastasha, you are in this amazing position of engaging with alumni who want to achieve impact through alumni consulting teams, through other sorts of opportunities. Can you share with us just a minute or two of how alumni who want to get involved could follow up and learn more?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much. So I love that this is the question that we're ending on. And this session in and of itself was developed as a partnership between CSI and Alumni Relations. Part of my role in Alumni Relations is to think holistically about the GSB Impact ecosystem and how we're bringing opportunities like this session and the things that you heard today to alumni. We have a core belief that there are a lot of alums out there who care about impact, and that there's not a great place for you all to come together yet. And so as Matt was mentioning, the volunteer management side of things, this is what we're working on and where my role centralizes. So I'm happy to be here as a resource, and I can put my contact information in the chat. And also, if you're interested in more sessions like this or following up with action, I really suggest that you join our Stanford alumni group, and I'll go ahead and put that on my screen as well, just so that you all have it. And here we will place things like opportunities like the Brian Lowry class that we mentioned at the beginning of this call, or opportunities to volunteer. One of the next opportunities that you'll see on that site is the alumni consulting team, which I also oversee, is jumping into its springboard sessions, where we'll put teams of alums together to help nonprofit executives with key challenges. We'll get together for an afternoon with them and brainstorm together how to help them achieve new heights at their organizations. And so there's lots going on, and this is the centralizing place where you can find a lot of that information. So I really hope you all will join us. And also, as Matt said, exercise a little bit of patience as we're continuing to bring all of this stuff together, but we really want to, leverage everyone's energies and give tangible ways to follow up. So please join us.